Hello again, everyone. John Flynn here from Flynn Real Estate, serving Southern Ontario, based out of the Niagara region. Thank you all once again for tuning in, and happy Halloween. Let's get out of this costume or this avatar and get into some statistics. Yes, there is more excitement in my life than that. First, I want to start off with a chart I made this week, and it kind of compares, or it does compare, regular inflation to house prices. Now, if you look at the actual inflation, which is the yellow line, house prices should be at $366,000 in Canada, the average house price, with a base year starting at 2005, when our price data goes back to with the Canadian Real Estate Association. If you look at just the regular target inflation, 2% a year, that's the red line, our house prices wouldn't be far off, 355,000. Now, our actual average house prices are 680,000 right now, or this is for the year of 2023. So the yearly average is 680,000, so quite a bit higher than the target or actual inflation. Thought that was a pretty interesting comparison. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's all about perspective. So the next chart I'm going to show you is the monthly mortgage payment for the average home in Canada. This compares average house prices by month, which go back to 2007, or at least the data I have from CREA. The yearly goes back a little bit further, but this is monthly, compared to the bank prime rate, which is kind of an in-between rate. It's not a variable, it's not the fixed, but I used the prime just because it was a consistent benchmark that I could use. And you can see since about around 09, we've had consistent, increase in mortgage payments. It probably looks like it's more than inflation, but regardless, it's been consistent up until the beginning of the pandemic. And of course, house prices shot up and then interest rates shot up. So it's gone extremely high, which is very worrying and disturbing for many. Now, I just want to move on to the next chart here, just to put it in perspective. So the data I have only goes back to August 07, I believe, or maybe it was March. But anyway, it's in 07. And you can see we had a 39% drop in the average mortgage payment based on this criteria, from $1,800 to $1,100 a month. And of course, then we came out of a financial crisis, and there was a big boom before then. Canada got off pretty easy, but there still was a big boom. Now, we have two metrics to look at. We have our mean line, which would put us around $2,500 per month. And many people, actually, I posted this on my X, and many people said even $2,500 a month is a lot of money for most people. But again, this is the Canadian average, so we're going to go with it. But looking at a similar drop that we had back in 07 to 09, if we had that same drop now, 39%, our average payment from the peak, which was 41.42, would drop to around 2,500. Very consistent with the mean line too. What does that mean for house prices? Of course, house prices would have to come down to meet that benchmark or that criteria of $2,500 a month, and interest rates would have to come down at some point too. So there's a lot of things needed, or major things needed, to get back to that mean line for mortgage monthly mortgage payments. Next, I want to move on to the Housing Accelerator Fund, and it's been all over the news. The government's going around, making all these announcements and promising to help fund the building of new units. So let's look at the data we have so far on it, based on the announcements, and then we'll get into the actual fund and kind of dissect that. So there's been 6 cities that have had announcements so far, and the data is here: Kelowna, Brampton, Hamilton, Vaughan, Halifax, and London. These are all 3-year plans. They do talk about going 10 years down the road, but these are 3-year agreements that they have signed, and those are the number of homes they've planned to build. 13,000 homes over 3 years with those combined areas. And the cash promised from the federal government, combined, it's $451 million. That's approximately $34,000 per unit they have pledged to these cities. And by the time they are done this $4 billion fund, around 115,000 units would have been built. So that's approximately 38,000 units per year. Now, it doesn't seem to me, from what I've read and what I know with the data, that these are going to be new units on top of existing starts and whatnot. Now, housing starts are down about 20,000 from last year. So that's only making up and adding another 20,000 units, theoretically. But we'll see what happens. These are, again, proposed units. They haven't been built yet, but there is funding there for $34,000 per unit, which isn't a lot. And hopefully the cities can, not take all that money on permitting and zoning and all the rest of that stuff. Now, before I move on, if there's anyone that's going to get offended by conspiracy facts or anything like that, I'm going to try to remain positive on this. I'm not a big sponsor of our current government when it comes to housing, but I will, give credit where credit is due. So if you're going to get offended, you might want to tune out. But if you want to hear what I have to say, it's probably worth your time. So here is the Housing Accelerator Fund. It is funded, or it is administered by CMHC, and this is kind of like their mission statement here. Encouraging initiatives that increase housing supply and promote the development of affordable, inclusive, and diverse communities that are low carbon and climate resilient. So my analytical mind tells me that I have heard this kind of messaging somewhere else. I'm sure you have too, but you can probably brainstorm and figure out where you may have heard similar catchphrases and whatnot. So regardless of what I think, let's look at the top 10 Housing Accelerator Fund initiatives. And this is a municipal roadmap. And Sean Fraser was very clear in his press release or his update on this last week that the municipalities and the areas that are going to get these funds need to meet this specific criteria. And if you don't meet it, you're not going to get it. Here's a brief clip of what he had to say about that before I get into the 10 criteria.
We've tried to take some of the guesswork out of this by sharing the best practices that'll be posted online today to identify the specific ways that cities can strengthen their applications. Over the next number of weeks, we're going to be moving into not just considering the largest cities in Canada's applications, but also considering the applications of small towns, rural communities, medium-sized cities, and we're going to be inviting them to increase their ambition by adopting some of these practices as well. When we have an idea of who the most ambitious applicants are in the fund, we'll have an opportunity to exchange views on where we think they can go further.
So starting off with the first best practice, as Sean Fraser puts it, end exclusionary zoning. Stop low-density zoning and regulation that excludes housing types such as affordable and social housing in residential areas. Encourage high density by allowing mixed-use development and high-density residential as of right within proximity to urban cores and transit corridors. So pretty much just create more density and get rid of these bylaws that prohibit it in every area almost. Number 2, make municipally owned lands available for housing through strategies such as disposition, acquisition, and or pre-development. I would actually say that's probably a good idea. There's a lot of municipal lands in great locations that could be utilized. Increase process efficiency by implementing new technologies or software to speed up development approvals, such as e-permitting. Of course, we always have to use new technologies to speed up any process. It's actually the opposite right now. It's really slow. But again, I've heard this theory or this terminology somewhere else also. Prioritize enhanced development approval process for rental and affordable housing. So you're prioritizing one kind of house over another. I don't know, that kind of goes against the inclusive thing. Most of Canada is middle class, but you're prioritizing rental and affordable housing. Anyway, I'll touch on that in a minute. Comprehensive review of development charges and fee schedules, including waivers with a focus on permits associated with affordable housing. Again, focusing on affordable housing, they should be focusing on the permitting and ease of permitting for all housing, not just one class. Reduce or eliminate parking standards to increase project viability, density, and reduce carbon footprint. So that makes sense in like the big cities and the concrete jungles, but in the majority of these smaller cities, I guess you could call them 100, 200,000 people, it's probably not viable. People need their cars to get around. And again, I think this is just parroting some other talking points I've heard from other places and other ideologists. Eliminate restrictions related to height, setbacks, building area, and others to allow greater variety in housing types, including accessory dwelling units. So we've had these zoning requirements and setback requirements for a reason. We have them for a reason, but just eliminating them, it seems like they just want to eliminate them all and just build anything anywhere. It's kind of a chaotic kind of system or attitude to have, or desperate. I don't know what it is, but I think that it should be looked at properly. And I don't think cities are just going to eliminate all zoning requirements and height restrictions or whatever the case may be and setbacks. They're obviously not going to do this, but this is what they're pushing for on the extreme side of things. Develop affordable housing community improvement plans or strategy/plans for the rapid deployment of affordable housing. So more affordable housing. I'd still like to see some strategies or plans for the middle class, people like myself and many viewers out there, but maybe there is something in here. Number 9, design and implement guidelines or pre-approved building plans for missing middle housing or specific accessory dwelling unit types, such as laneway housing or garden suites. Doesn't sound like the middle I'm talking about. I'm talking about houses with a garage, not a laneway suite. And another thing I just want to talk about actually is that missing middle. The missing middle is not the middle class. This is a term that's thrown around way too often. It doesn't mean middle class. It means the missing middle as in units. We have, single unit homes, and then we have condominiums that are, hundreds of units. They're talking about fourplexes, sixplexes, eightplexes in these urban areas. And this is the missing middle. Usually middle class or middle income people don't live in fourplexes and sixplexes with their 3 children and 2 cars. So again, don't confuse missing middle with something that's being advocated for the middle class. It's actually not representative of the middle class in Canada. Number 10, develop grant programs, encouraging the development of housing types that align with the Housing Accelerator Fund, such as missing middle, row homes, purpose-built rental, and or that promote new/innovative construction techniques, modular, prefab, mass timber construction, etc. So of course we have the missing middle again, one of these keywords that's kicked around by the global elites, I guess. And there's nothing in this accelerator fund for the middle class, single family homes and whatnot. It's all high density, missing middle, row homes, 4 or 5 unit projects. So I'd like to see from the government, I'd like to see some initiatives that promote housing for the majority of Canadians, which is not low income or the super rich. It is the middle class or the middle income people. But we have seen nothing from this. So again, I don't really have much good to say. And there are a couple of good key points in there with permitting and whatnot. But most of it seems like a socialist kind of agenda to pack more people into cities. Now, I think that the housing minister is a good poster boy for this agenda because he did just graduate in 2021 from the Young Global Leaders with the WEF, the World Economic Forum. He was in the class there, you can see it, of 2021 when he was the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Minister. And of course, he was named as one of the world's young global leaders by none other than Klaus Schwab. Now, again, if you like the WEF, that's fine with me. I'm not going to judge you on this. I personally don't. I like Canada as a sovereign country. But just so you think that I'm not the only conspiracy theorist in the room, check out this clip from the CTV question, again, from the same news conference when Sean Fraser was given the update. And let's see what they have to say.
Thank you, Minister. I'm wondering, in regards to the Housing Accelerator Fund, how much does the concept of a 15-minute community play into that people could be able to not just have easy access to public transit, but also live and work in the neighborhood where they are?
Look, thanks for the question. So I've not considered the 15-minute city concept as part of the Housing Accelerator Fund framework. That said, I think it's a good idea if people can live close to where they work. I think it's a good idea if people live close to the services that they need to access. And where that can't be the case, I think it's a good idea to create housing options for people to live near transit so they can access those services or employment opportunities even when they may live some distance away from their destination each day. I've certainly heard of the 15-minute city concept, but in the policy formulation or implementation, that explicit concept has not informed the Housing Accelerator Fund decisions. To the extent that there are commonalities around people being able to access services, employment opportunities, or to have vibrant and livable communities, I suppose someone could draw that analogy, but there's never been explicit consideration of the 15-minute city concept within the Housing Accelerator Fund.
And there you have it. Nothing to see here, folks. Until next week, I'll see you then.